She should know by now that I'm crazy and I talk to cameras. But, you know, trying to teach a dog about technology. They know nothing. Anyway, a couple shout outs. I'm super grateful to my daddy for cutting this wood. And also my amazing grandma who provided me with this cabin area. I've got my coffee. It's actually espresso from Cuba. It's flavored with this amazing maple syrup made by my friend Razor Hibbs. It's fantastic. And of course some half and half because you can't have coffee without that. But I'm going to read you a story tonight on this episode of Heaven on Earth. It's one of my stories, or one of my favorite things to listen to. And it's so simple. And my mom always read to me as a kid, and it's always made me feel super happy. So it's one of the things that I want to share with you. And it's free, which I love. And as a kid, you know, we always get to hear stories, and as an adult, it doesn't really happen that much anymore. So I'm going to share this story with you in one of the most amazing books in the world. It's called Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I think it's a really important book, not only for women, but also for men who have a desire to get in touch with their feminine side, maybe get some insight into some of the things that we're thinking. I personally believe that both men and women have a feminine side and a male side, and if you're truly evolved, then you are in touch with both of them. Otherwise, you might look for one or the other externally. And in this life today, it seems like a relationship or something is nearly impossible. So I'm going to share this story with you. And it's going to be like one of the stories in the whole series. I'd love to read this entire book to you. And if anybody wants to read a story out loud that touches them from this book, that would be super awesome. And then maybe we'll cover some other short stories in other books. But anyway, this one is called Skeleton Woman. I might have to stop the camera every now and then to drink coffee, put some more wood in the fire, or, you know, restart it. But this story's pretty short. Anyway, Skeleton Woman. She had done something of which her father disapproved, although no one any longer remembered what it was. But her father had dragged her to the cliffs and thrown her over and into the sea. There the fish ate her flesh away and plucked out her eyes. As she lay under the sea, her skeleton turned over and over in the currents. One day, a fisherman came fishing. Well, in truth, many came to this bay once. But this fisherman had drifted far from his home place and did not know that the local fishermen stayed away, saying this inlet was haunted. The fisherman's hook drifted through the water and caught, of all places, in the bones of Skeleton Woman's rib cage. The fisherman thought, "Oh, now I've really got a big one. Now I really've got one." In his mind, he was thinking of how many people this great fish would feed, how long it would last, how long he might be free from the chore of hunting. As he struggled with this great weight on the end of the hook, the sea was stirred to a thrashing froth, and his kayak bucked and shook, for she who was beneath struggled to disentangle herself. And the more she struggled, the more she tangled in the line. No matter what she did, she was inexorably dragged upward, tugged up by the bones of her own ribs. The hunter had turned to scoop up his net, so he did not see her bald head rise above the waves. He did not see the little coral creatures glinting in the orbs of her skull. He did not see the crustaceans on her old ivory teeth. When he turned back with his net, her entire body, such as it was, had come to the surface and was hanging from the tip of his kayak by her long front teeth. "Ah!" cried the man, and his heart fell into his knees. His eyes hid in terror on the back of his head, and his ears blazed bright red. "Ah!" he screamed, and knocked her off the prow with his oar and began paddling like a demon toward shoreline. and not realizing she was tangled in his line, he was frightened all the more, for she appeared to stand upon her toes while chasing him all the way to shore. No matter which way he zigged his kayak, she stayed right behind, and her breath rolled over the water in clouds of steam, and her arms flailed out as though to snatch him down into the depths. Anyone ever felt like that, where you went out, you caught something, you didn't really know what it was, and that it would be attached to you, and for some reason, he wailed as he ran aground. In one leap, he was out of his kayak, clutching his fishing stick and running, and the coral white corpse of Skeleton Woman, still snagged in the fishing line, bumpity-bumped right after him. Over the rocks he ran, and she followed. Over the frozen tundra he ran, and she kept right up. Over the meat laid out to dry he ran, cracking it to pieces as his mucklucks bore down. Throughout it all, she kept right up. In fact, grabbed some of the frozen fish as she was dragged behind. This she began to eat, for she had not gorged in a long, long time. Finally, the man reached his snow house and dove right into the tunnel, and on hands and knees scrabbled his way into the interior. Panting and sobbing, he lay there in the dark, his heart a drum, a mighty drum. Safe at last, oh so safe, yes, safe. Thank the gods, Raven, yes, thank Raven, yes. All bountiful Sedna, safe at last. You think? Imagine when he lit his whale oil lamp, there, it lay in a tumble upon his snow floor, one heel over her shoulder, one knee inside her rib cage, one foot over her elbow. He could not say later what it was. Perhaps the firelight softened her features, or the fact that he was a lonely man. But a feeling of some kindness came into his breathing, and slowly he reached out his grimy hands, and using words softly like mother to child, began to untangle her from the fishing line. Oh, na, na, na. First he untangled the toes, then the ankles. Oh, na, na, na. On and on he worked into the night, until dressing her in furs to keep her warm. Skeleton Woman's bones were all in order, as a human should be. He felt his leather cuffs for his flint, and used some of his hair to light a little more fire. He gazed at her from time to time, as he oiled the precious wood of his fishing stick and rewound the gut line. And she in furs uttered not a word. She did not dare, lest this hunter take her out and throw her down to the rocks and break her bones to pieces utterly. The man became drowsy, sleeping under his skins, and soon was dreaming. And sometimes as humans sleep, a tear escapes from the dreamer's eye. We never know what sort of dreams cause this, but we know it is either a dream of sadness or longing, and this is what happened to the man. The Skeleton Woman saw the tear glisten in the firelight, and she suddenly became so thirsty. She tinkled and clanked and crawled over to the sleeping man and put her mouth to his tear. The single tear was like a river, and she drank and drank and drank until her many years-long thirst was slaked. While lying beside him, she reached inside the sleeping man and took out his heart, the mighty drum. She sat up and banged on both sides of it. Bom, 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 bom. As she drummed, she began to sing out, flesh, 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 flesh. And the more she sang, the more her body filled out with flesh. She sang for hair and good eyes and nice fat hands. She sang the divide between her legs and breasts long enough to wrap for warmth, and all the things a woman needs. And when she was all done, she also sang the sleeping man's clothes off and crept into his bed with him, skin against skin. She returned the great drum, his heart, to his body, and that is how they awakened, wrapped around one another, tangled from their night in another way now, a good and lasting way. The people who cannot remember how she came to her first ill fortune say she and the fisherman went away and were consistently well fed by the creatures she had known in her life underwater. The people say that it is true, and that is all they know. I love that story. Good thing he persisted, right? Didn't run away. I find that very awesome. So I guess I'm just going to read a little bit about the excerpt on what the author says. And she's really awesome. She's Latina. I think this book has been translated. Her name is Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And she's traveled all over the world gathering stories from different tribes of the myths and stories of the wild woman archetype. And this book was written in the 70s, and it's kind of just kind of highlights different things that women might feel throughout their journey as a woman. Like when to love, when to walk away, when to kill. As a wolf, you know, she parallels different things as like a lone wolf spirit. So anyway, this is what it is. If you want to stop and say goodbye or good night, you're welcome. We're going to read an excerpt by the author on how she interprets the story. She's got a PhD in psychology, probably a few other things, but I'm not quite sure. Sorry, Clarissa, if I got that wrong. I'll do you justice later, but thank you again for everything. Alright, so Olive actually went inside my wolf, and she can still smell all the bears and everything, so if she's got to come out here and scare something away, I apologize for stopping. Anyway, Death in the House of Love. That is what the title of her excerpt is. Inability to face and untangle the skeleton woman is what causes many love relationships to fail. To love, one must not only be strong, but wise. Strength comes from the spirit. Wisdom comes from skeleton woman. As we see in the tale, if one wishes to be fed for life, one must face and develop a relationship with the life-death-life nature. When we have that, we are no longer bumbling along, fishing for fantasies, but are made wise about the necessary deaths and startling births that create true relationship. When we face skeleton woman, we learn that passion is not something to go get, but rather something generated in cycles and given out. It is skeleton woman who demonstrates that a shared living together, through all increase and decrease, through all endings and beginnings, is what creates an unparalleled love of devotion. The story is an apt metaphor for the problem of modern love. The fear of the life-death-life nature, the death aspect in particular. In much of Western culture, the original character of the death nature has been covered over by various dogmas and doctrines until it is split off from its other half, life. We have erroneously been trained to accept a broken form of one of the most profound and basic aspects of the wild nature. We have been taught that death is always followed by more death. It is simply not so. Death is always in the process of incubating new life, even when one's existence has been cut down to the bones. Rather than seeing the archetypes of death and life as opposites, they must be held together as the left and right side of a single thought. It is true that within a single love relationship there are many endings. Yet somehow and somewhere in the delicate layers of the being that is created when two people love one another, there is both a heart and breath. While one side of the heart empties, the other fills. When one breath runs out, another begins. If one believes that the life-death-life force has no stanza beyond death, it is no wonder some humans are frightened of commitment. They are terrified to go through even one ending. They cannot bear to pass from the veranda into the inner rooms. They are fearful, for they sense that there, in the breakfast room of the House of Love, sits Lady Death, tapping her toe, folding and refolding her gloves. Before her is a work list. On one side, what is living, on the other, what is dying. She means to carry through. She means to maintain a balance. The archetype of the life-death-life force is grossly misunderstood through many modern cultures. Some no longer understand that Lady Death is loving, and that life will be renewed through her ministrations. In many folklores, she receives much sensational press, that she carries a scythe and harvests the unsuspecting, that she kisses her victims and leaves their corpses scattered behind her, or that she drowns them and then wails long into the night. But in other cultures, such as East Indian and Mayan, Licky, which take more care to teach about the wheel of life and death, Lady Death enfolds the already dying, easing their pain, giving them comfort. She is said to turn the baby in the womb to the head first position so it can be born. She is said to guide the hands of the midwife, to open the pathways of the mother's milk in the breasts, as well as to comfort anyone who weeps alone. Rather than vilifying her, those who know her in full cycle respect her largesse and her lessons. Archetypally, the life-death-life nature is a basic component of the instinctive nature. This is personified through world myth and folklore as Dama del Muerte, Lady Death, Kotlikue, Hel, Berkta, Kuan Yin, Baba Yaga, Lady in White, Compassionate Nightshade, as a group of women called by the Greeks Grey, the Grey Ladies, from the Banshee in her carriage made of night cloud to La Lorna, the weeping woman at the river, from the dark angel who brushes humans with a wingtip, collapsing them in ecstasy, to swamp fire that appears when death is imminent. Stories are filled with these remnants of the old death-life goddess personifications. Much of our knowledge of the life-death-life nature is contaminated by our fear of death. Therefore, our ability to move with the cycles of the life-death-life nature is quite frail. These forces do not do something to us. They are not thieves who rob us of the things we cherish. This nature is not a hit-and-run driver who smashes what we value. No, the life-death-life forces are part of our own nature, an inner authority that knows the steps, knows the dance of life and death. Tongue twisters! It is composed of the parts of ourselves who know when something can, should, and must be born and when it must die. It is a deep teacher if we can only learn its tempo. Rosario Castellanos, the Mexican mystic and ecstatic poet, writes about surrender to the forces that govern life and death. Dame la muerte que me falta. Translation, give me the death I need. Poets understand that there is nothing of value without death. Without death there are no lessons. Without death there is no dark for the diamond to shine from. While those who are initiated are unafraid of Lady Death, the culture often encourages that we throw Skeleton Woman over the cliffs, for not only is she fearsome, it takes too long to learn her ways. A soulless world encourages faster, quicker, thrashing about to find the one filament that seems to be the one that will burn forever and right now. However, the miracle we are seeking takes time to find it, time to bring it to life. The modern search for a perpetual motion machine rivals the search for a perpetual love machine. It is not surprising that people trying to love become confused and harried, and as in Hans Christian Andersen's story The Red Shoes, dance a mad dance, unable to stop the frantic jig, and whirl right past the things they in their deepest hearts cherish most. Yet there is another way, a better way, which takes into account human foibles, fears, and quirks. And as so often happens in the cycle of individuation, most of us just stumble over it. Anyway, there's a lot more that she speaks of for the story, which I encourage you to pick up and read. I find it super inspiring that this book was written so long ago, and these concepts are today super relevant, at least for me in my life. How many of you can relate to the Skeleton Woman, or perhaps the fisherman? I find that to be very interesting, and if you would like to share that with me, that would be great, or not. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this story, and that you will tune in for more, because I would like to read the whole thing. I would like to give a shout out to my friend Hadley, who just discovered Women Who Run with the Wolves. I actually discovered it a little while ago. My mom bought it for me for Christmas, and it's been super helpful for me in understanding this crazy journey as a young woman, maybe not so young anymore. I noticed that my hair is turning gray, but that's totally fine because I'm proud of it. I would also like to give a shout out to my friend Rox, who gave me this copy. I actually had given my other copy to a friend in need, and that's kind of how this book works, I find, is that it's something that shows up in your life and you pass it along. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time!